In operation from 1940 to 1945, Auschwitz-Birkenau was home to the killing of approximately 1.1 million Jews, Poles, and Russians. Following their arrival at the camp, the prisoners of Auschwitz were systematically tortured, abused, and eventually killed. While the trials and tribulations of male prisoners are known to many, due in large part to memoirs like Elie Wiesel's Night, the experiences of women in Auschwitz were in many cases far different from their male counterparts. In an attempt to strip women of both their humanity and their femininity, sexual abuse and gender-based exploitation by the Nazi captors ran rampant. While this humiliation and abuse broke countless women, some women were able to use gender and sexuality as a means to subvert Nazi authority and survive the Holocaust. Historian Nama Sheikh argues that the sexual abuse by the SS and by prisoners in positions of authority took place when prisoners first entered the camp. Indeed, men and women alike faced inspection and selection upon arrival at Auschwitz. Here, prisoners were forced to strip naked in front of Nazi guards and were shaved of their head and body hair. While this was undoubtedly a humiliating experience for men, it was an experience of desexualization and sexual abuse for women. Stripping down in front of male guards, women stood naked and shivering, while the guards verbally abused the prisoners, making fun of their bodies and breasts, while some began touching their private parts. The first room into which we stepped, notes Gisela Pearl, was filled with young SS men. Their eyes shone with expectation, their ape-like movements betrayed an unhealthy, abnormal sexual excitement. From here, the women were shaved head to toe, stripping away what little dignity and beauty they might have still felt. This sexual abuse was twofold. While most women were shaved, some women, such as Olga Lengyel, were selected to step out of line and keep their hair at the request of the guards. Not wanting to be singled out, Lengyel willingly parted with her hair. Although she was punished for doing so, she likely saved herself from having to work within the camp's brothel, another tool of Nazi sexual abuse within Auschwitz. This sauna, as many have come to call it, was merely the beginning of the abuse they would face. Once inside the camp, men and women alike struggled to find food to stay alive. Many experienced prisoners, often in positions of power within the camp, were able to use excess food as a means of sexually exploiting women. Sex in exchange for food became common, and was in many cases the difference between life and death. Thus, women were often trading sexual dignity for a chance at survival. Gisela Pearl describes the process, quote, openly, shamelessly, the dirty, diseased bodies clung together, and the piece of bread wandered from the pocket of the man into the greedy hands of the woman. The selection of sexual partners, in and of itself, was another form of sexual abuse. The men often preferred more full-figured women. The basis of selection was purely physical, reducing all women, not just those who were selected, to sexual objects. The ramifications for such exchanges were substantial. To the guards and male prisoners, Nama Sheikh argues, a female inmate ceased to be a human woman and became a wide-open physical sight that possessed the external signs of female sexuality but contained no humanity. Many women, often after their liberation, were guilt-ridden from accusations that they had sold their bodies to survive, while so many others died. The link between maternity and femininity is one of the first links the Nazis sought to sever. With many women being separated from their children upon arrival, the loss of the feeling of motherhood had a major impact on the woman's ability to connect with femininity, especially after having their heads shaven and clothing removed. The complications many women experience with menstruation further severed this link, as the emotional and physical stress they were experiencing caused many women to cease menstruation. One survivor noted that, due to her lack of menstruation, she, quote, doesn't feel like a woman anymore. One already belongs to the old ones. Even the women capable of menstruating were humiliated, as they had no way of properly cleaning themselves. On top of all this, Nazi medical experiments on women had devastating impacts on a woman's menstruation and childbearing capabilities. While most cases of sexual abuse were performed by men, there were female capos who participated as well. Perhaps no female guard better embodied such practices as Irma Grisi. Known for both her cruelty and good looks, Olga Lengyel referred to Grisi as the angel of death. While the prisoners were stripped of their hair, clothing, or other sources of beauty, Lengyel frequently refers to the beauty that Grisi herself worked so hard to attain. One of Langill's most vivid memories of Grisi's cruelty was the guard's summoning of a handsome Georgian man to her office. In an effort to persuade the Georgian man to become a slave to her, Grisi stripped the man's lover down, repeatedly whipping and torturing the naked woman who she later sent to the Auschwitz brothel. Immediately after, Langill was forced to watch as Grisi stripped down for a dress fitting. Unhappy with the dress's fit, Grisi, while still naked, proceeded to beat the seamstress. All the while, Langill was questioning how such a beautiful woman could be so cruel. While the sexual abuse and dehumanization of imprisoned women is apparent, gender and sexuality were not always employed as a means of oppression in Auschwitz. On the contrary, some women utilized it to keep some glimmer of hope alive. Having been stripped of her children, her beauty, and her feminine pride upon arrival, Langill's memoir tells the tale of how a woman in this hell could use femininity to build up her spirit and persevere. In some cases, prisoners were able to use love and sexuality as they saw fit. From the time of their arrival, separation from lovers and loved ones placed both men and women alike in a state of sadness and desperation. However, passion, ingenuity, and a little luck allowed some of them to overcome this obstacle of separation. Many couples risked being shot just so they could stand at the fence line and exchange conversation for just a few brief moments. Others were so driven by a desire to be reunited that they made brazen escape together. One couple mentioned by Langill managed to escape the camp in SS uniforms. Although the giving of food to women in return for sexual favors was common, it can be argued that these exchanges actually empowered some women. Langill herself was propositioned by a Polish man, but she denied his advances. Langill was flattered, in a sense, upon learning that, quote, his was the finest style of love-making in Auschwitz. The ordinary approach was much more crude and to the point. Thus, by denying sexual advances, women were able to maintain control over their dignity and sexuality. In other instances, women flaunted their bodies in order to win the favor of men with food. Other times, groups would conspire to aid in a secret rendezvous between two genuine lovers. In either case, women were able to use their femininity and sexuality, both of which the Nazis had sought to strip them of, to make themselves happier and to place themselves in positions of power while subverting Nazi authority. Even the beautiful Irma Grisi was used by Langill to bolster her own spirit. While Grisi is lashing out at the dressmaker, Langill makes note of the beauty of Grisi's naked body. However, Langill notes that Grisi had heavy, thick legs. Langill was, quote, happy to observe that she had an imperfection. By leveling the playing field, Langill appears to be using her own femininity as a means of sustaining her spirits. Ultimately, it is hard to deny the effectiveness with which the Nazis were able to use gender and sexuality to degrade imprisoned women. Charlotte Delbel, a French survivor of Auschwitz, noted that, quote, mothers ceased being mothers and became only bodies. Separation from children and medical experiments robbed these women of any sense of motherhood. Furthermore, the exploitation of female sexuality within the camp reduced many women to feel as though they were nothing more than sexual objects. While this may be true, it is important to remember that there were exceptions. By taking their minds and bodies under their own control, some women imprisoned in Auschwitz-Birkenau were able to use femininity, love, and sexuality as means of resisting Nazi torment while promoting humanity and human interest.